If you have $2 million in your retirement accounts, that's a number most people would be thrilled to see. But here's what almost nobody walks through. $2 million in a traditional retirement account and $2 million split across a traditional, a Roth, and a non-retirement account are not the same $2 million. Same balance on the statement, very different amount of money that you actually get to spend. And the difference comes down to one thing: taxes you haven't yet paid. There is a second layer to this too. What happens to this picture 8 years from now once required distributions start? We'll get to that. In this video, I want to show you 3 things. First, what your actual after-tax income looks like if you're retiring with $2 million, all in a traditional retirement account. Second, what happens to that picture once Social Security and required minimum distributions enter the equation. And third, what the same $2 million would look like if it were to be structured differently, and what that means for the $2 million you actually have right now. One framework that helps here is thinking of your retirement income in 3 tax buckets: pre-tax traditional retirement accounts that are fully taxable on withdrawal, you got a deduction up front; Roth accounts that are completely tax-free; and brokerage accounts where only the gains are taxed and often at much more preferred lower rates. The mix across those 3 buckets determines your effective tax rate far more than your total account balance does. Here's what most people don't fully internalize about their traditional retirement accounts. Every dollar in there has never been taxed, and that includes decades of compounding growth on top of your original contributions. So for many people, well over half of that balance is gains, and that have never seen tax on a return. Like a paycheck. A Roth dollar is a paycheck you've already cashed, taxes withheld, done, nothing more to be owed. The traditional 401k dollar is a paycheck still sitting in the envelope. Full amount written on the front, you just haven't opened it and yet see what the IRS takes first. Compare that to a brokerage account, non-retirement account, where you've already paid tax on the original contributions and you only owe tax on the growth, often at lower capital gains rates when you sell if you hold it for over a year, and they're either 0, 15, or 20%, which does pale in comparison to what you may pay on your paycheck. So when someone says, I have $2 million, that statement is doing a lot more work without telling you the most important thing: how much of that $2 million is actually yours to spend, and how much of it, in a sense, money you're holding for the IRS until you withdraw it. Let's put real numbers on this. Let's say we have a couple, both age 65, they just retired with $2 million, all of it in traditional retirement accounts. They want to spend $90,000 a year after tax to live comfortably. Using a baseline starting point of a 4% withdrawal rate, $2 million produces $80,000 a year before tax, but they need $90,000 after tax. So right away, we need to withdraw more than that baseline. And it's not a small one because the withdrawal itself is a taxable event. To net after taxes, $90,000, this couple actually need to withdraw somewhere in the range of $100,000 and $105,000, depending on their state and other details, because a portion of the withdrawal goes straight to federal income tax and it never reaches our checking account. Now add Social Security. Let's say they're going to need $40,000 a year combined in benefits. Here's the part that catches a lot of people off guard. Depending on their total income, up to 85% of their Social Security benefit can also become taxable. To be clear, that 85% is a ceiling, not a flat rate. The actual taxable portion depends on something called provisional income, which is something that can get quickly confusing, but can be summarized as your adjusted gross income plus half of your Social Security, plus any other tax-exempt interest with a few other add-backs. For married couples filing joints, once that provisional income crosses $44,000, you hit the 85% tier. So a large 401k deduction and withdrawal can push you through it. So 401k withdrawal isn't just taxed on its own, but it might actually have us get caught with other tax gotchas along the way, depending on when we withdraw from it. Now here's where it gets more interesting, because this couple is 65 and the required minimum distributions don't start until 73. And if you were born in 1960 or later, that age actually gets pushed out to 75 under the Secure Act 2.0, which gives you an even wider window to plan for. For those 8 years, if this couple withdraws $100,000 to $105,000 a year, but the portfolio is still growing at, say, 6 or 7% a year, the account balance doesn't necessarily shrink. It might even grow, depending on the returns. So by 73, instead of $2 million, this couple might have somewhere closer to $2.2 million or $2.4 million, still 100% pre-tax. Really quick here on RMDs, required minimum distributions, is they're calculated by taking our prior year-end total traditional retirement account balances and dividing by this thing called a divisor. This is really an actuarial timetable of life expectancy for us. And so really it begins closer to about a 4% required distribution from our accounts when we become age of needing to take them. Specifically at 73, the R&D divisor is 26.5. So the required distribution on an ending balance of $2.3 million divided by 26.5 is roughly $87,000. And that divisor shrinks every year as you age, which means the percentage you are forced to withdraw does modestly keep climbing. By age 80, the divisor drops to around 20.2. So the required withdrawal on the same balance jumps closer to 5%. It's not too far from what they were willing to withdraw, but this is an increase, and it might not actually align with what they need. But notice what's true here. Every dollar in that RMD is taxable, the same as before, and it's now stacking on top of Social Security, which is also still partially taxable. Now let's change just one thing. Same couple, same $2 million total, but instead of 100% traditional, let's say it's split. $1.3 million in a 401k, $450,000 in a Roth account, and $250,000 in a brokerage account. To get the same $90,000 after tax, this couple has options. And I love options. They could pull some from the brokerage account where the growth portion is taxed off that at a low rate. And here's a detail that could often get overlooked. If this couple's taxable income is low enough, the long-term capital gains rate on the brokerage growth can actually be a whopping 0%. So with careful withdrawal sequencing, and when we pull from different accounts, those brokerage gains might cost them nothing in taxes. They could pull some from the Roth completely tax-free, and they'd only need to pull the remainder that they need from the 401k. The result is that to net the same $90,000, their taxable income might be $20,000 to $30,000 lower than all pre-tax couple, even though they're spending the same amount and started with the exact same $2 million total. Less of their Social Security becomes taxable too, since their other taxable income is lower. And down the road, their eventual RMD is calculated only on the $1.3 million pre-tax portion, not on the $2 million portion. Same $2 million, same spending, meaningfully less in lifetime taxes, just because of how it was structured. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, but I do have $2 million all in my 401k right now. Are you telling me I made a mistake? Absolutely not. Roth accounts have not even been around for very long, to be quite frank. And having $2 million saved in any form puts you ahead of the vast majority of retirees. This isn't about whether $2 million pre-tax is really good. It clearly is, relatively speaking, depending on how you are comparing yourself. This is about whether there's still time to change the mix before it's locked in. And for a lot of people in their early to mid 60s, there absolutely is. The years between retiring and 73, before R&Ds start, and often before Social Security starts too, tend to be the lowest income years of somebody's life. Some planners call these the gap years, and they're uniquely powerful since we have no income coming in from W-2 work, no Social Security yet, no R&Ds, no forced income elsewhere, taxable income, that we can really start to see when might we benefit, if at all, by accelerating income into lower years, rather than having to pay it as a forced when we're in our 70s. One way to smooth out our lifetime tax bill is to be filling up lower levels of brackets, whether it's through just distributions or Roth conversions, which in turn pays the tax at rates you may never see as low ever again. That's often the best window for some of his tax planning opportunities, but it's not free. Any sort of conversion means paying tax on it now that you could have deferred. And so part of the risk involved there is that if we are paying a tax on a conversion at a relatively high market environment and the market tanks next year or in the following year, this is some of the biggest risks by doing big conversions or big money movements at any given time, because it actually increases what we think of our sequence of returns risk when we're drawing from funds, because it means we opted to pay more taxes in a certain year. So very interesting to think about how all of this relates. I often also see that people don't always use their entire allowed deduction alone. So for a married couple, That's 65. That's roughly $35,500 in 2026. And it may very well end up being higher with the accelerated senior deductions that are available for a short period of time. Now, this is not a one-size-fits-all conversation. If your spending need is high enough that your eventual R&D won't exceed it anyway, meaning you'd withdraw that much regardless, the tax picture is less about required minimum distributions creating excess income and more about the ongoing rate on income you needed anyway. If you already are in a low tax bracket and expect to stay there, the gap between paying low tax now versus later is smaller, so the urgency is lower. And depending on which state you're in, some states don't tax retirement account withdrawals at all, which changes how much this matters too. Through the federal piece is what we're talking about and focusing on today. I've had plenty of conversations with folks that have had a very good initial starting diversified type account base that didn't make sense for them to do any sort of advanced tax planning. If your accounts are already spread across pre-tax, Roth, and non-retirement accounts, or your spending need is high relative to your balance, this is more useful as background context than as something urgent. But if most of what you have is saved in pre-tax retirement accounts, and you're within a window before RMDs begin, a conversation to begin now with a tax-focused planner would be something I would suggest. This is the type of work that I do all day, every day, and there is no shortage of opportunities that surprise me of ways that we can be making sure that our money is stretched a little bit further so we can live our lives that much more. Link in the description on that below if it's of interest to you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.